Today on Locked On Phoenix Suns, a ton of news. Finalists in the coaching search, reportedly mutual interest between KD and a Western Conference team. A lot to get to next.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Suns. I'm Brendon, Kleen, a staff writer at Awful Announcing and a credentialed Suns media member. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen here on this Wednesday. Don't forget Locked On Suns, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So click that follow or subscribe button. Do what thousands of other Suns fans have already done. Become an everydayer and get locked on to the Phoenix Suns right here each and every day. 4 finalists who are being argued over in the reporting. Some news around Kevin Durant and the San Antonio Spurs and another draft breakdown. Joining me to do all of it, as always, from the Wild West Valley, my fellow Suns credentialed media member. How are we feeling? Ben Garcia.
Oh, it's really nice. We're not treading water for news today. I wish it was a little bit more of a steadier stream, but all right, the pipe just burst. We had to cut segments today, or like things that we might want to talk about.
Yeah.
Yesterday, we were just talking about Combine, just getting in the weeds of players. So it's nice to have.
You didn't expect to lead a show with Yaxel Lindeborg yesterday? That wasn't.
Oh, dude, that was so stupid too. I was gonna save that for the third segment, but like. Turns out the Michigan Wolverines are just everydayers for Locked On Suns. Here I am gassing the guy up. I'm making social clips about him, and he's not even attainable anymore. But anyways, get that to the third segment. But
well, you and I and maybe some other Suns fans who I think fell in love with him a little bit, because I did see some others on Twitter this morning when the news came down that he was going to Michigan who were regretting it or feeling bad. We'll all kind of have to keep a little bit of an eye on whether that decision goes well for him. And if not, we can say, we told you so. We would have been right here welcoming you with open arms to the Valley of the Sun. You wanted to go be a Wolverine. How'd that work out for you? But NIL money these days goes a long way. Let's get to the coaching finalists, though, Ben, because it is a little bit of he said right now. So we knew the finalist list was coming. For a reminder, this is supposed to be the group that interviews in person. Now, whether that's in Phoenix or somewhere else, we'll see. But we had known this was coming, but now Duane Rankin and John Gambadoro have slightly different lists, Ben, of who they're reporting is going to be part of this group. So Duane Rankin over at the Arizona Republic reported that the final 3 would be Chris Quinn, Jordan Ott, and Sean Sweeney, with Micah Nori, quote, being considered as well. I don't know what that means. Then Gambo, John Gambadoro of Arizona Sports, put out an article and a tweet where he put his reporting about who the finalists would be. And very different. Jordan Ott was in both. That's the only overlap. Oh, Quinn, sorry. Ott and Quinn. But then he brought Johnnie Bryant back from the dead. I don't know about that. We'll get to that. And then Gambo did say that there's probably one other name that he does not know. He seems to agree that there's going to be 4 people. He doesn't know the 4th for sure. He doesn't think it's going to be Sean Sweeney. He said no to Sean Sweeney. So I don't really know where this leaves us. It feels like Jordan Ott from the Cavs and Chris Quinn from the Miami Heat are for sure going to be getting these in-person interviews. Beyond that, I kind of think it's a little bit of a toss-up. How are you reading this group of names here? What do you think is going on?
Listen, I change my opinion when new information comes out, and I kind of swung to the Chris Quinn pendulum of things. But now that we got Johnnie Bryant into the fold, and I trust Gambo. Like, I know no shade towards Duane Rankin at all. Does a fine job, has reported on stuff many times. But Gambo has just been consistently right about these things often. And he had said today on his show as well that like he hadn't heard a ton about Johnnie Bryant until he had found out that per a bunch of league sources, he was going to be in there. So I was ecstatic. Yeah. You're telling me I have a 50% chance. Now, listen, I really like Micah Nori too. I was starting to grow a bit of an affinity for Sean Sweeney the more research I did for him. Still not into the tier of the 2 other guys, Chris Quinn and Johnnie Bryant, who I like. Johnnie Bryant a little bit more than Chris Quinn. But I mean, what a great list. You're talking about a 50-50 shot of me getting Chris Quinn or Johnnie Bryant. I feel great. It's a very competent potential for the Suns to have as a head coach, and two guys who are, we remember Chris Haynes saying that around the league, people expected Johnnie Bryant to be a head coach. And then Chris Quinn, he's been a part of Heat culture for 11 years now and worked his way up. I'm curious who the fourth person might be, but that's my general reaction to it. I thought it was an A+ with the outside shot of Jordan Ott, who I can ask you a question about as well. But what about you? How are you feeling about this?
Good. Same level of good. I've trusted and felt pretty solid about it throughout. I think these are the types of names you would want to see. It's funny because like Bryant kind of became your guy, but like when I was doing the Just Basketball show and talking about the NBA overall for a while, for 2 seasons basically, I was a huge Johnnie Bryant. I was the one saying every time there was an opening, why is this guy not getting a look? He has been on number 1 seeded teams multiple times over in different situations. He was under Quinn Snyder. Then he was the offensive balance for Tom Thibodeau's defensive first mentality in New York for 4 years. Then that was before he even went to the Cavs and helped build that program to even greater heights. So I don't dislike him, you know, and so I'm totally happy to see his name pop back up here. I wouldn't really be disappointed with any of them, but I think it begs the question of how will people feel after seeing so many promising names and everybody having their favorites, whether that be, Bryant like you, or I think I probably lean Norrie or Quinn a little bit more. Maybe people like the defensive acumen of Sean Sweeney, considering he spanked the Suns, what's in the playoffs a couple years back in with the Dallas series. I don't think anybody's favorite is Jordan Ott. And so what if he gets hired? And then the MSU connection is back in the forefront, coupled with the fact that we all got so intrigued by these other people, and then you hire probably the least well-renowned and most connection-based one of all of them. I do think this still could set up some Suns fans to be pretty disappointed if it goes the direction that we think it might here.
Yeah, there's definitely you used the term glaze yesterday. I'll use a different term. It's definitely a polar bear on this list, and it is Jordan Ott, given the fact, because I don't know this to be true. I just assume Mike Norrie is going to be the fourth guy because I'm just doing process of elimination there. But let's say it's Mike Norrie or Dave Bliss. Like, let's say it's one of those two guys. Both of them, I do think, are better resumes than Jordan Ott. I think everyone on this list is more than qualified to be the head coach of this team. But there are levels to this. The only person that's not a top assistant is Jordan Ott. And it would be tough. Like, this is the one where it kind of, because of how much I really like
Bliss is
Johnnie
not
Bryant.
the top assistant in Oklahoma City, I don't think. So that would be one other one.
I thought he was. Either way, let's go. My point is this. Jordan Ott and Johnnie Bryant. Johnnie Bryant is the lead assistant over the Cleveland Cavaliers. It would be, which leads me to believe that Jordan Ott won't be the guy, because how could you take Jordan Ott, who is literally the lesser of the two on the same team, and with the guy Johnnie Bryant just got a little bit of a better resume, unless Bryant's just an awful talker, which doesn't lead me to believe that would be the case because of where he's at now. How could you take Jordan Ott over him? And so I would agree with you, man. I'm not going to pull the nepotism card or Jordan Ott shouldn't be here because he's just a Michigan State guy. Brian Gregory is and was and still is unqualified for the position. I don't think he's unqualified. It's just hard when you stack up the resumes of a Norrie, of a Bryant, of a Quinn, and say that guy should be ahead of the other ones. That would raise my eyebrow, but maybe he's just awesome. He does have the resume to show it. I look at Johnnie Bryant and him, man, and I'm like, I don't know how you could pick him over Bryant. That doesn't make sense to me.
Another funny thing about this, I agree with everything you said. The re-inclusion, the popping back up of Johnnie Bryant, who is already outranking this guy on his own staff, it would be another bad optics look for them to go lower on that totem pole and hire Ott to be this team's head coach unless they can really just make an awesome case. But I don't think people will buy it because of that MSU connection. But this isn't really relevant to the Suns. It's just kind of funny. Ott and Bryant are both, not surprising given that they work for Kenny Atkinson now, they're both kind of on the Bud coaching tree, which would be a little bit of a funny little wrinkle. And speaking of Bud, I thought this was an interesting nugget that I just wanted to throw at you to get your reaction to that I sent you before we hit record here. So Dwayne Rankin also reported, I think actually last week, something we didn't really touch on because it's not huge, but Bud's assistant coaches are still on staff here, partially to be guys to work out the players in the draft workouts that they're doing, which, okay. And they might be kept on the next guy's staff. I don't know how you feel about that if you have a strong opinion. And then the David Fizdale kind of lingering thing that's been out there too. Apparently he only got kept on last year in part because Bud struck out on some guys that he wanted here. So that wasn't so much of necessarily the Suns like being over the moon and forcing Fizdale onto Bud's staff. It was almost like a last resort, and Fizdale was doing them the favor. So that was some cleanup on the rest of the coaching web that we hadn't gotten to that I think could end up mattering. What do you think of it?
It makes you feel better about the Suns, not just forcing Dave Fizdale on the roster and, like you had mentioned, him kind of doing him a favor. Here's my ultimate opinion on it. The Suns can want someone on the coaching staff, and they can put anyone up for and like suggest. I suggest people all the time. You suggested me for something not too long ago. It doesn't mean they need to get the job, because ultimately the only person's voice that I want mattering is Ott, Bryant, Quinn, Norrie, Bliss. That's the only people's opinions that I want to hear about. It's not a great opinion, but it's just I don't want I want the front office doing front office things. I want the ownership doing ownership things. I want the head coach doing head coaching things. But yeah, man, I just really quickly on that last wrinkle, I mentioned this a couple of days ago, and at the very end, I was just like, hey, Gambo did mention towards like almost the end of the year that the Suns would want a black head coach. Definitely someone who would probably be able to connect better than an old white guy in Mike Budenholzer. And because the Suns are trying to go what it looks like swinging the pendulum the other direction, they want to go first-year head coach. They're not a championship pedigree head coach. They want to go younger. Frank Vogel and Budenholzer aren't necessarily older guys. Listen, what's the opposite of white? Black. So they might want to go Johnnie Bryant. And not like I'm not trying to make it something that it's not. My point is, I think that does play a bit of a factor when you talk about relationships. And listen, man, I'm
yeah. Well, I
think
think it's why I think it's part of why we also thought Chris Quinn made so much sense, right? I mean, former player as well. So
yes.
I think, versus Ott or, Norrie or Sweeney, who they went up the old-fashioned way, right? They kind of were in the film room. They're doing workouts. They're learning from a mentor in the coaching world. They're not learning from having played the game in the same way that Bryant, I know he didn't play in the NBA, but he played in the Pac-12 at University of Utah, and then I think he played overseas as well. So, that helps. And he's younger. He's on the younger end, even than some of these other guys. He's only 39. So, yeah, I think all these would be good, and I will even just say Ott to me it's not terrible, but we'll have to see. Shams Charania dropped a bomb. I don't know if we have a name. I don't know if we call it a Shams bomb the way we did a Woj bomb. That there was mutual interest between the Spurs and Kevin Durant at the trade deadline, and that obviously could matter this summer. We'll talk about what it could mean next. First, today's show is brought to you by, as I, for some reason, did not have our wonderful sponsor ready here, our friends at DoorDash. That's right. During the rest of the NBA playoffs. Wow, my tabs just broke. That's what the issue was. NBA fans, playoff season means big performances and even bigger rewards. DoorDash is bringing the heat with a slam dunk deal for Dash Pass members through the rest of the 2025 NBA playoffs. It's called They Swoosh You Score. Anytime a player drops 50 or more points in a playoff game, Dash Pass members score a free 3-piece crispy tender combo from Wingstop the very next day. Just place an order of $20 or more. Use the code Wingstop50 at checkout, and that combo is yours. Crispy, delicious, and totally free. Offer valid noon to midnight the day after the game. Terms apply. I don't know. These low-scoring playoff games, I'd be a little scared, but you don't have to pick who it's going to be. I think Shea could get the job done before it's all said and done. Brunson and Towns, I don't know if maybe you root against the Pacers, frankly, at this point, because I don't know if any of their individual guys. Pascal got 39. I'm not sure he's going higher than that. So root for a Thunder Knicks finals. Root for your 50-plus, and sign up for Dash Pass to unlock this and more exclusive deals all season long. When any player scores 50-plus the rest of the playoffs, Dash Pass members can grab a free 3-piece crispy tender combo from Wingstop the next day with a $20 or more order and code Wingstop50. That's Dash Pass, your door to more savings, more flavor, and more ways to win. Terms apply. All right, Ben, let's keep it rolling. You score one for you. You get on me about my tabs. That was the issue. It literally, I filled it so much that I couldn't click to the ad.
Yeah, man. You and I, like, when people ask, like, what's it like working with Brendon? I genuinely love working with you, but I tell people, like, we are like complete opposites of people. At least it feels like. And one of the first thing I said to you when we met at the Suns Arena was like, you have like 30 tabs open, Brendon. I don't know how you do it. I can't have more than 4 open, and then I'm losing it. So you know what? I picked you up there. I saw the ad. I threw it on there, so it's all right. You know, it's all good. But that sometimes it's going to come back to bite you, Brendon. I bet you never turn off your laptop either. Ugh.
Turn it off, like all the way?
Yeah, like shut it down.
I restart it from time to time, but what's the point of shutting it down? I have it docked on my I have a desktop computer, like I have a monitor and stuff. So what's the point of turning it off?
I shut down my computer every night. Let it rest.
Yeah, but for what? Why should I do it? I'll do it if you tell me what's wrong. Okay.
It's better for updating. And gotcha. And listen, how about you just go run 20 miles, or is it better to run 2 and then take a break? All right, there you go, Brendon. Didn't make a lot of sense.
Here's my tabs right now.
That is ridiculous. Dude, that gives me anxiety. That is crazy.
Yeah. All right. Let's get to the mutual interest between the San Antonio Spurs and Kevin Durant with some input from Locked On Spurs host Jeff Garcia, who chimed in with what the Spurs offer might look like. But again, Shams Charania reporting that there was mutual interest. Now, we had heard the Spurs as a team, including from Shams, when the outset of the offseason began, and we were just taking the gauge on who could generally be interested. And obviously, once they got the number 2 pick on lottery night, Ben, we've talked about San Antonio a couple of different times. I think we kind of agreed that the number 2 pick itself is a little too rich to be going back for Kevin Durant. But I do think that if there was mutual interest back then, I understand why it didn't get done. Because they basically, Rich Paul and De'Aaron Fox just engineered a trade directly to San Antonio. There was no bidding war for De'Aaron Fox. There was not any. It felt like it was just predetermined. He's going to go to the Spurs. That's it. Get it done. And I get why that took up their energy. But this could be a way, now that we know that they're most likely keeping the 2nd overall pick and not pursuing Giannis Antetokounmpo, which has been the other reporting around the Spurs lately, I think this could be a little bit of a splitting of the difference, Ben, between what they would have to do to get Giannis versus still going all in, but obviously at a cheaper price, because Durant's not going to cost you as many assets as Giannis in his prime getting MVP votes still. So it doesn't surprise me at all that we're circling back to San Antonio as a potential really aggressive suitor for KD.
Why wouldn't they be? I will continue to champion or beat the drum of, I don't think going after Giannis is an insanely smart move if you're a team like the Spurs and the Rockets. You're already on the cusp of being a championship-ish contender. Why gut your roster? And, I was talking to Jeff Garcia today from Locked On Spurs. This is not a guy that I asked him if I could do this trade, but this is just kind of the framework. He said he thinks because the Spurs could hold the cards a little bit more, which is understandable. One of their first-round picks obviously lower, the not so 14 you're looking at, a second round pick, one of their younger players like Johnson or Vassell, but definitely not number 2 or Castle, which we had mentioned before. So if it's going to cost you, maybe the Suns could get a Jeremy Sohan and a Vassell. And a Vassell, and then some salary cap filler, which have to be Harrison Barnes in the 14th overall pick. Like, let's just say that's the high end. And I think that that's in the ballpark of what we're talking about here with Jeff. Why wouldn't you do that instead of giving up Castle, maybe the number 2 overall pick, and Sohan and Barnes, just to have Fox, Wembanyama, and Giannis on a team? I think that makes Kevin Durant even more desirable at times. So, yeah, man, I would love to know your thoughts if you think as well that that's kind of on the same track that I'm at. But look at the Suns and Nets. They tried to go all in. It didn't work. The Lakers tried to get Westbrook, Davis, and LeBron. It didn't work. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a little bit less in the, like, all-in trades for Hall of Famers is bad train than maybe you are. I think it absolutely could have worked with the Suns. It could have worked with the Nets. It could work with any team in the future. But part of the thing here is that it's one thing that's a little bit different is that the Spurs already have their best player of the future in Victor Wembanyama. They already have a lead playmaker. The Rockets kind of have neither of those things in a way. And so, like, to me, the Rockets side of it is a little bit of a different conversation, but I actually think that that's one argument for why KD fits better here and why I could actually see San Antonio doing it. Not to mention the fact that, like you said, we went over this with the Rockets thing yesterday. The cap sheet is just a mess for Houston in order to be able to get a deal like that done. Whereas, not only do the Spurs have more of the middle-type salaries between Vassell, Keldon Johnson even, Harrison Barnes, and enough rookies and picks to get it done from there, they also have a cap sheet that can bring on a $50 million player at a little bit less of a cost. Like, they're not up against the tax and some of those things in the same way that Houston is, which complicates a trade and their future as well. So, like, De'Aaron Fox is only making 35 and then 37. He's not one of these $50 million players. Wembanyama is still on his rookie contract for the next 2 seasons. Whichever of the players they keep, Keldon, Vassell, Harrison Barnes, those guys are on pretty reasonable contracts, and they have some money to give out this summer to bolster around that. So I like it all. If as far as picks go, obviously 14 this year would be kind of the, probably the first thing to come up, but they have gobs of picks. They have swaps with Dallas and Minnesota and Boston. Even as Jeff mentioned, second round picks, Ben, they have the Sixers and the Pelicans next year in terms of seconds. They have the Pelicans in 2028, the Wolves in 2028, the Clippers in 2029. Like, they have tons of that even that could end up being like top 10 second round picks. Those aren't going to make or break a deal, but it's a nice sweetener if you're talking about at least a little bit of a bidding war. The only holdup that I have on this is I'm not positive that Kevin Durant fits with De'Aaron Fox.
I agree.
That is a little bit of a holdup. I don't know how much time we really need to spend on that particularly, but it brings me to the question of something we haven't really talked about, and we can circle back on this, but does this seem like a place Durant would want to go?
Yes.
San Antonio.
Yes. Well, one, Texas is always going to be a desirable destination because no state tax, so you get to keep more of your money there. I have the same worries about, honestly.
And he went to Austin. We should say he went to Texas. They played a game in San Antonio partially to kind of be a tribute to him this past year. Or they played a game in Austin. They played against the Spurs. They're trying to be that kind of South Texas fan base. So that's another thing that people will probably say, but go on.
So yes, popularity there as well. I also think Kevin Durant thinks he's so awesome, and he is, that he can fit anywhere, and he kind of can. I do worry about the Fox thing because, he gets to the rim, shoots the 3 ball. He's kind of a ball dominant player.
To me, it's more about the speed that he plays at. That's what I was talking about. Fox is
that's a good point too.
He's the fastest. His offenses in Sacramento were the fastest in the NBA by an absolute mile. That was the full identity of that team. We've seen Kevin Durant wants to be more methodical and slow things down and be a half-court type of team. That's the part that I think is going to rub against it. Not just that Fox is going to have the ball, because KD can fit it with a ball-dominant point guard, but it's, does he want to sprint down the floor after every missed shot?
Well, I worry. Yes, that's a good point too. But I worry also that, I mean, Kevin Durant played off ball here a bit, and everyone complained because he wasn't being utilized the right way. So that's also something as well with Kevin Durant. But like to keep a long story short, and I would love to get back to this at a different day because we can go through all the teams. I think Kevin Durant will ultimately like to be there because of the Texas connection, which I didn't even think about. And he's Kevin Durant. He thinks he's awesome and he can fit in everywhere, and he mostly can. But I'll leave it at that.
My only thought for now, and the only reason I wanted to throw this in here, is to say I would be looking at the East if I'm any of these guys. The disparity right now between the conferences is so extreme that even if I'm teaming up with Victor Wembanyama and a good point guard, it's the West. You're going to be fighting to even get to the 6th seed and avoid the play-in every year for the rest of however long KD's in the league. Whereas you go to a team like Miami, who we talked about earlier in the week, it's wide open. It's the same thing with Giannis. I get wanting to maybe just stay in Milwaukee because you could be on a god-awful Milwaukee team and still be the 6th seed because who else is going to make the playoffs? So just something to keep in mind. Let's get to our draft breakdown of the day. Spend a little bit of time before we close out talking about Collin Murray-Boyles, another toolsy forward, younger guy. Could he be the Suns' pick at 29? Next. Alrighty, let's close out the show. We've got...
You used the wrong ad break. That's why I thought I was going away.
I don't like that long one. People get... Who wants to sit there for 10 seconds?
I agree with you, but it's supposed to... I was told that's what we were supposed to do. That's how I know if I need to go away or not. Gosh darn it. That's my bad. We're like De'Aaron Fox and KD.
CMB, Collin Murray-Boyles, South Carolina sophomore. He will be 20 years old on draft night. He is a 6'7" tank of a player. And let's just start here, Ben, because it sounds preposterous. I know anyone who hasn't spent any time thinking about these guys or the draft or anything yet, it's going to be like, really another dude who gets this comparison? But I'm going to tell you, it's not ridiculous. The comps you will see if you look this player up is Draymond Green. And I don't think that he is going to be Draymond Green. But when I look at the Ringer's draft guide, when I look at Yahoo's draft guide, and that's the comp that's on here, you watch him play, and it's the closest comp you can come up with. It's just a really big shoe to fill, so it almost feels crazy to say that.
Just so you're aware, I have in my notes right here, kind of reminds me of Draymond Green, but don't say that. You'll sound like an idiot. Because Draymond Green is a top 5 defender ever.
He's a Hall of Famer. Yeah.
He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. But I agreed with you. I didn't know what.
Well, to be clear, like, I'm not trying to own that I came up with that. It's on everywhere you look.
No. I didn't see that anywhere. I just was like, this guy kind of reminds me of Draymond Green.
Low center of gravity, but it's big, undersized. Yeah.
It's the same thing we talked about yesterday where Maxime was like, Rasheed Wallace. I was like, no, I don't really see Rasheed Wallace in that player. I immediately thought of Draymond Green because he's a little bit of a tweener. He's 6'8". He's a big guy. He's 245. Doesn't shoot the ball unbelievably well, but you can't necessarily leave him open, if that makes sense. Shoots okay from the free throw line. He shot 71% from the free throw line. Now, I guess you're right. He made 9 3-pointers out of 39
I was going to say,
2 years.
He took, and taking only 39 is honestly the more damning part of that. If he's not even confident that, I think the jump shots, it's even worse than Lindeborg, who we talked about yesterday, by a substantial margin. Like, this is a guy where it very well could just be that he never makes enough shots to be able to have an NBA career. And I said that about Lindeborg, but this one's even more extreme.
Well, I kind of gave him a little bit of a break because Lindeborg shot 35%, 34% from 3 in the American Athletic Conference. This guy was playing in the SEC. So I have to give him that. I didn't fall in love with him right away because I just wonder how that's going to work with Booker. He seems like someone that does need the ball in his hands and has to make the 3-point shot at a decent enough clip so that guys don't sag off him, because he's so big. He would take dudes to the rim, and it wasn't like necessarily like over athletic, although he kind of seemed like a freak athlete at times. I just wasn't sure if that's someone, because he's 19, he's super raw. I have to at least think about how he's going to play with Booker. I don't know how well that would have went down. Good passer, though, if that makes sense.
I don't know what you mean by it. I don't see him and Booker really. It's a guy who's like a small ball center and then a scoring shooting guard. So what do you worry about with those guys? Don't really relate to one another too much.
Well, the Suns are going to need a little bit of firepower offensively if we're talking about Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal being gone. He's going to get the ball oftentimes where he starts stuff out in the top of the key. Teams are going to sag off of him, and I think the way he's going to make his living is by getting to the basket because he's such a big guy. I don't know if
I think he's going to make his living by not being a scorer at all. I mean,
yes.
If you're talking about Draymond Green as kind of a benchmark, he doesn't really impact the game as a scorer, period. Right? So, I mean, the idea that you're going to have the ball in this guy's hands as like a point forward anytime soon, it almost like I'm hearing you, it almost kind of sounds like you're talking about two different timelines of his development. Because next year would be when you would be thinking about how do you get some scoring on the court to replace Beal and Durant. Maybe just Durant. He's not even going to be in the mix for that.
No,
he's not even going to be playing substantial minutes. I mean, like
that's why
it's a 20-year-old first-round draft pick. So he's probably going to be the 9th man on this team, 8th man on this team next season if he plays, if he's on the team, whatever. Whereas then your other concern seems more like in the future, which is once he develops a little bit, maybe he is a player that the ball is in his hands because he gets a little closer to the Draymond comp, not sounding so ridiculous. The other comps you will see are like Julius Randle, Paul Millsap, and those guys did, they had the ball in their hands as offensive players, as forwards from time to time. So that would be in the future. And then maybe I guess I could see the idea that there's some overlap, but I think you and I are on the same page that we don't want or think of Booker as being the lead playmaker for this team. So if you told me, could a player like Draymond Green fit with the Suns? Abso-freaking-lutely. I guess I don't share the concerns about fitting with Booker, because I think to me it's like a defensive dude who has a high IQ and can kind of get him going as a dribble handoff guy, or maybe as kind of a post passer, things like that. And Book can run off screens and get open off the ball and finish plays. Like, I don't know. That seems good to me.
What I will say is what I really did like about him is, one, he seemed like a bit of an athlete. And I really liked, from what I saw, the passing. He did have 8 rebounds a game. That's not nothing for a guy who's 6'8", with the wingspan that we didn't mention, 7'2". That is like JaVale McGee,
Julius Randle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm just talking about reach, so I say JaVale McGee, but you're right. Draymond Green, Julius Randle, that stuff does help.
It's the like, I always compare it. It's not great because they're people, but like Mike Wazowski, like it's like that kind of vibe. You know what I mean? Like these dudes where they're just so long that it's like it's a little bit. It's overwhelming. It allows them to do things on the court other dudes just can't do.
I don't want to keep on saying Draymond. I don't even want to say Julius Randle, but 19 years old, super raw.
Well, I would agree unique. That's why those comps you kind of have to go there, because
a bit of a unicorn.
What other player are you going to say if not Draymond? Because there's not a lot of other Draymonds.
I guess the better question would be is, where is he going to play? He's not a 5. He's too small. Is he a 4? Because he's still a little small.
Well, if you're talking about, again, yes, these comps are all best case scenario, because like we talked about yesterday, it's kind of stupid to give his best comp is this guy who flamed out of the league after 4 games and you never heard about him. That's probably what he's going to be, because it's not useful. It's kind of like the ideal role, the ideal context. So if you do kind of think about him as a Draymond light, and there's other guys like this, like I can come up with a couple, like Jeremiah Robinson Earl. That's a dude who came out of Villanova. He's on the Thunder right now. He's bounced around a little bit. He's kind of like this, like a small ball 4-5. He's he's really like on the outskirts of the NBA because his game never really rounded into form. That'd probably be like a more reasonable, realistic type of comp. But these guys do tend to play center. So you say he can't play the 5. Well, if he's a 4, he has to be on the court with a 5 who can stretch the court. He can't be a 4 who doesn't shoot next to a 5 who doesn't shoot. It can't be that you're playing lineups next season with him and Nick Richards because it's not 1993 anymore. So he either has to figure out how to survive as a 5 and develop his defense and his physicality and his strength, or he has to develop his offensive game enough where he can survive as a 4-man and not be just dragging you down because of how limited he is. Those are the two pathways.
I also want to mention this. He is 19 right now. There is a chance he gets even taller. Maybe he reaches 6'10". That is not an anomaly. That does happen. And again, 19. He might just need to focus on the 3-point game a little bit. Here's another thing, like with these just 2K build players, is oftentimes they don't need to learn how to shoot the ball because through high school and through college, they can just get to the rim at will. So get him in with an NBA coach that can teach him how to shoot the 3 ball a little bit decently. And listen, man, if he adds that to his repertoire, like, yeah, I do get much more excited about him.
Because roles are more rigid lower on. So these guys aren't encouraged to shoot the ball. I mean, like, I just looked it up while you were saying that, and if you had taken a snapshot and Draymond had left Michigan State after 2 seasons, he would have had taken 17 3-point attempts at that point in time. Then junior, senior year, when he's more of a leader and he's developed more, 100 3-point attempts, 134 3-point attempts, and then he started to look like a more NBA-ready prospect because he could shoot the ball. But, you know, it's all about what guys add as they age. And so, yeah, it's totally reasonable to think that maybe Murray-Boyles at least becomes closer to Lendeborg, who is older than him, in a little while, where he's a guy who can make a third or 35% of his threes, and then it's a whole different ballgame.
I was very hot on Lendeborg, as high as I could be after one day. This was your guy to mention. Is this a guy that you're like, you got a pretty keen eye on? I feel like my opinion doesn't matter as much on this one because I said, let's talk about Yextel yesterday.
Here's why I think I wanted to bring him up. One, he's somebody that the draft guru type guys who analyze this stuff online seem to be a little higher on than consensus. Like, he's getting mocked around the Suns' range, but a lot of the people who write about the draft, I think he's better than that. So if he falls, then maybe you're getting a better talent than your draft slot, which is always good value. But the other thing, I mean, we're comparing him to Draymond, which means we're comparing him to an alum of what program? Michigan State. And I'm not just doing that to be a meme, so I'm not just joking. I'm saying that because Brian Gregory literally told us he wants guys who fit this type of mold, guys who are physical, defensive, do the grunt work, do the, hustle stuff that jumps off the screen. So who better than this guy who's getting comped to probably like the best example of that in recent Spartan history. So I just felt like he was a good fit with what the Suns could be looking for. But I do like him personally too. Like, there's a lot hinging on him getting better at a lot of things, but at 29, I'd feel good about it.
I just wanted to give you a chance because if you're the one that's going to bring up the guy, I'm assuming you've done at least a little bit more research than I did on him. And I think the Brian Gregory point's a really good point that maybe the Suns just might be interested in that guy. So you've sold me a little bit more than I was before, but I'm still skeptical. But he's 19. Like, what do I expect? Dude is going to the prom a year ago.
At some point, we'll get to the international guys, but we'll keep giving you probably one every day or so of these as we continue and get closer to draft night, and then eventually give our favorites and talk about who the Suns are actually being linked to and all that sort of stuff. But good to have the background and awareness of these players as we do get closer to draft night. Hit follow, subscribe if you haven't already. Become an everydayer. Coach before long. More draft talk. Who knows? There might be some other KD team that comes out of the woodwork a month into the offseason. We'll talk to you tomorrow.